samsaradava nalalita loka taranaya karunya kana kanatam praptasya kalana kunarnavasa vande uroshi charanarabindam Mahaprabhu Kirtanarithya Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasora Sena Romanchakam Pahashutaranga Bhadyo Vande Uroshi Charanarabindam Shivikrahara Dana Nitya Nana Shingara Tamman Tiramarjanado Yutasya Bhaktam Chaniyunjatopi Vande Uroshi Charanarabindam Chaturvidhasi Bhagavat Prasada Sadhana Tripta Haripata Sankha Krite Vatiptim Pajatasa Deva Vande Guroshi Charanarabindam Shirathika Mahadavayora Para Madhurya Lila Gunarupa Namna Shirathika Mahadavayora Para Madhurya Lila Gunarupa Namna Patishanasa Tanalolupasa Vande Guroshi Charanarabindam Nikunja yuno ratikeri sitai Yayadi pir yuktira peshaniya Tatrati daksha dati vallabhasa Vande Guroshi Charanarabindam Sashatari Tena Samasta Shastre Utasthatha Bhaviteva Sadbhi Kintu Praborya Priyaeva Tasya Vande Guroshi Charanarabindam Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado Yasya prasada nagati kutopi Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado Yasya prasada nagati kutopi Dhyayam suvam stasya yashasti santhyam Vande guru shi charanarabindam Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutare Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Chaitanya Nityananda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Nilamata Radha Nilamata Sri Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadra, Jaya Sudarshana. Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Lakshmana Hanuman, Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Lakshmana Hanuman. Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha, Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha, Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha, Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha. Jaya Gauranita, Jaya Gauranita, Gauranita Jaya Gauranita Nitai Gaura Haribo Haribolo Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo Jai Om Shnu Pada Brahmhamsa Pratika Acharya Stota Shata Shishmat His Divine Grace Abharchandrinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya PPT Founder Acharya Bhaktivedanta Institute Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Om Shnu Pada Brahmhamsa Pratika Acharya Stota Shata Shishmat His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai Nam Acharya Srila Haridasa Thakur Ki Jai Premise Koho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Dada Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Bhumi Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Shri Ayodhya Dham Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Harinama Sankirtan Ki Jai Samarita Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glorious assembled devotees. All glorious assembled devotees. All glorious assembled devotees. Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bo.
Namaste Narasimhaya Prahlada Lada Daine Hiranyakashipur Vakshaha Shilatanka Nakana Hai Hito Nasimha Parato Nasimha Yato Yato Yami Tato Nasimha Bahir Nasimha Hida He Nasimha Narasimham Adim Sharanam Paprapti Tavakara Kamalavare Nakam Abhuda Shringam Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanabringa Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Hare Nakam Abhuta Shinga Lalita Hiranyakashipu Tanabringam Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव नरसिंहदेव भगवान की जय
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रियासी नमो नमः राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाओ ऐ अभिलाषी राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाओ ऐ अभिलाषी चेतमारा शरण लो तारा वंशा पूर्ण हो कृपा गौरी गौरो तारे वृंदावन वासी मोरा यही अभिलाष बिलास कुंज दियो वास नयने हरि बो सदा युगल रूप राशि এই নিবেদন ধরো সখীর অনুগাতা করো सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी दीना कृष्ण दास कोई ऐ जीना मोरा होए श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेम सदा ये न भासी श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा ये न भासी यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्म हत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्म हत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्म हत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी, जय तुलसी महारानी. जय वृंदा देवी, जय वृंदा देवी, जय वृंदा देवी, जय वृंदा देवी. जय जय प्रभुपाद, 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद. श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी की जय।
Resident of Vrindavana. My desire also grant me residence in the precious groves of Shri Vrindavana Dham. Thus within my vision I shall always behold the beautiful paths of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me follow Kara Danso's Vraja. Please give me the privileged devotional service and make me my own maid servant. This very fallen lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always swim in the love Shri Radha and Govinda. Srimati Tulsi Maharani ki jai. There are 10 fences in the matter of chanting holy name that should be avoided, and they are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their lives for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider the name of the demigods of Lord Shiva, Brahma, to be equal to independent name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the order of spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or students of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities and strength of chanting holy name. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna one of the auspicious ritualistic activities, offering the Vedas as fruity activities, karma, ganda. 9. To instruct a faithless person about the glory of the holy name. 10. To not complete faith in the chanting holy names and to maintain material attachments in understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 fences. In order to achieve desire success, Krishna prema. Now let us offer most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just as I trees who can fulfill to everyone. They are full of compassion, fallen, conditioned souls. Shri Chaitanya Shikshastakam ki jai. Cheto Tarpana Marjanam Pavamaha Tavakni Nirvapanam Shriya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavatu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purunarmita Sadanam Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Bahuda Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra pita niyamita smaranena kalaha etadesi tava kripa bhagavam mamapi durudevami desham yaha janina nurakaha trinatapi sunichena tarorapi saishnuna amanina manadena kirtanya sada harihi na thanam na chanam na sundarim kavitam va jagadisha kamaye Mama Jammani Jammanishware Bhavata Bhaktir Haituki Tvai Ayinanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitam Mam Vishame Bhavam Buddha Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Stithaturi Satesham Vichintaya Nayanam Galadashuludaraya Vadhanam Gadgada Rudaya Gira Pulakai Nichitam Vapurukada Tava Nama Karane Bhavishati Yuga itam nimishena chakrusha pravisha itam Shunya itam jagat sarvam govinda vilahe name Ashrisava padratam pinnashtumam Adarjanam marmhatam karotuva Yatha tatha va vidathatu lampato Matprana natha suseva na paraha Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Shri Chaitanya Shastakam.
Jai. Glory
To Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years, and the extinguishes fire of conditional life, or repeated birth and death.
This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large,
because it spreads the
the
rays and
rays of
benedicts the
benediction
moon.
moon.
It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benedictions to living beings.
Thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have mastered all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness enable us to easily approach you by holy names. But I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw on the street. One should be more tolerant than the tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your closest devotional service birth after birth. O Son of Maharaj Nanda, Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I have fallen into this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me with my atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love, flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and when will the hairs on my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like a great millennium. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he hands you roughly raised and praised, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Siksastakam Kriya. Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai.
Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragnatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Shakham Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachata Desha Tarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Daitaya Kripaptaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhuryo Jala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktita Shri Gaurakarna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Siddhanta Dvanta Harine Namo Gaurakishoraya Sakshat Vairagya Murtaye Vipalambara Sambodhe Padam Pujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachidananda Namine Gaura Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gauravir Bhava Bhumiswanya Deshta Sajanapriyaha Vaishnava Savabhama Shri Jagannathaya Te Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratishe Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Hey Krishna Karna Sindho Dinapanto Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surator Pangur Mamamanda Matergati Matsarvasva Padam Bojo Radha Madanamo Hano Divyadvindaranyakaupadramadaha Srimadranakadasimhasanastho Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Devo Prasthalibi Sevamano Smarami Srimad Rasa Rasaram Devam Sivata Tatastitaha Karasam Venusana Gopir Gopinatha Sriyestunaha Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasa Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahmasamhita Ki Jai Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadirade Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prakarasat Masukapaviksha Lashavriteshu Surabhira Pipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasam Brahma Sevyamanam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venum Kvanantam Aravinda Dharaya Taksham Parharvatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govinda Mahadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasa Madhamali Vamsi Ranangadam Pranaya Kedi Kalavilasam Shamam Tripanga Lalitam Yata Prakasham Govinda Mahadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Anganyasya Sakalendriya Vittimanti Pasyanti Panti Karayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadi Mananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedeshu Durlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakta Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Shatavasara Sampragamyo Vayurathapi Manaso Munipungavanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tattve Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chaitum Jagatanta Kotim Yachakti Rasti Jagatanta Chayayatanta Antantrasta Paramanu Chayantarastham Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manujasa Seva Samprapya Rupa Mahimasana Yana Pusha Suktaryam Eva Nikama Pratithai Suvanti Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Patibhavitapi Stabir Eva Nityarupataya Kalapi Goloka Eva Nivasatya Kilatma Bhutto Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santa Sadeva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundara Chintya Guna Swarupam Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Mutishu Kalanya Mena Tishtan Nanavatara Makaro Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhava Parama Pumam Yo Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful, spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin. And he is the prime cause of all causes. Okay, you can read, Prabhu.
I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, the first progenitor who is tending the cows, yielding all desire, in abodes built with spiritual gems, surrounded by millions of purpose trees, always served with great reverence and affection by hundreds of thousands of Lakshmis or Gopis. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is adept in playing on his flute, with blooming eyes like lotus petals, with head decked with peacock's feather, with a figure of beauty tinged with the hue of blue clouds, and his unique loveliness charming millions of cupids. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, round whose neck is swinging a garland of flowers, beautified with the moon locket, whose two hands are adorned with the flute and jeweled ornaments, who always revels in pastimes of love, whose graceful threefold bending form of Shyamasundara is eternally manifest. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, whose transcendental form is full of bliss, truth, substantiality, and his thirst full of the most dazzling splendor. Each of the limbs of the transcendental figure possesses in himself the full-fledged functions of all the organs and eternally sees, maintains, and manifests the infinite universes, both spiritual and mundane. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is inaccessible to the Vedas, but obtainable by pure unalloyed devotion of the soul, who is without a second, who is not subject to decay, he is without a beginning, whose form is endless, who is the beginning and the eternal Purusha. Yet he is a person possessing the beauty of blooming youth. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, only the tip of the toe of whose lotus feet is approached by the yogis who aspire after the transcendental and betake themselves to pranayama by drilling the respiration, or by the jnanis who try to find out the non-differentiated Brahman by the process of elimination of the mundane, extending over thousands of millions of years. He is an undifferentiated entity, as there is no distinction between potency and the possessor thereof. In his work of creation of millions of worlds, his potency remains inseparable. All the universes exist in him, and he is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms that are scattered throughout the universe at one and the same time. Such is the primeval Lord whom I adore. I adore the same Govinda, the primeval Lord, in whose praise men who are imbued with devotion sing the mantra suktas told by the Vedas by gaining their appropriate beauty, greatness, thrones, conveyances, and ornaments. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, residing in his own realm Goloka, with Radha resembling his own spiritual figure, the embodiment of the ecstatic potency possessed of the 64 artistic activities, in the company of her confidants, Sakhis, embodiments of the extensions of her bodily form, permeated and vitalized by his ever blissful spiritual rasa. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who is Shamasundara, Krishna himself with inconceivable, innumerable attributes, whom the pure devotees see in their heart of hearts with the eye of devotion tinged with the salve of love. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who manifested himself personally as Krishna and the different avatars in the world in the forms of Rama, Nrsimha, Vamana, etc. as his subjective portions.
Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai. Glorification of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.1. Janmadasya yavat yata Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmad Yasya Yatatas Janmad Yasya Yato Niviyat Itaratas Charte Suvigya Swarat Tene Brahma Hidaya Adikavaye Muyanti Atsurayaha Tejo Varimidam Yata Vinya Dam Nastrena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, all-pervading personality, Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen in water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual, although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Dharma pujita kaitravocha paramo nirmatsanam satam vedyam vastavam atra vastu shivadam tapo trayan milunam Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite Kim Vapure Ishwaraha Sadyo Hidyavurudyate Tra Kriti Sususubhistakshanat. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold mysteries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.3 Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam Sukhamukad Amrita Dravya Samyitam Pibata Bhagavatam Rasam Alayam Muhur Aho Raska Bhuvibhav Kaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire to your Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all including liberated souls. Srimad Bhagavatam Granta Raja Ki Jai. Go to Premanandi Haribol. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskati Desitarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today we are hearing from Canto 3, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 12, verse number 4. Sanakam cha sanadam cha
Sanakam cha sanandam cha
sanatanam atat mabu
Sanatanam Atmabhu
sanat kumaram cha munin
Sanat Kumaram cha Munim
niskriyan udvaretasa
Nishkriyan Urdaretasha
sanakam
Sanakam
sanaka
Sanaka
cha also
also
sanadam
Sanadam
sananda
Sananda
cha
cha
and sanatan sanatana
Sanatana
ata thereafter atabu Brahma, who is self-born, sanat kumaran sanat kumara cha also munin the great sages niskriyan free from all fruit of action urdhva ritasa those whose semen flows upward. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. In the beginning, Brahma created 4 great sages named Sanaka, Sananda, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumara. All of them were unwilling to adopt materialistic activities because they were highly elevated due to their semen's flowing upwards. Well, this is very significant. For most people, semen flows downwards and is wasted. But for genuine devotees, the semen flows upwards through the spine and fecundates or illuminates the intelligence with knowledge. So this is something you don't have to practice to do. Either you can do it or you can't do it. Let's put it like that. By becoming celibate and being always engaged in devotional service, this is something that can happen naturally. It's not like an exercise to try and raise your semen up to your brain. Right? Okay. Although Brahma, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Somebody would like to read? Anybody?
Although Brahma created the principles of nescience as a matter of necessity for those living entities who were destined to ignorance by the will of the Lord, he was not satisfied in performing such a thankless task. He therefore created 4 principles of knowledge: Sankhya, or empirical philosophy for the analytical study of material conditions; Yoga, or mysticism for liberation of the pure soul from material bondage; Vairagya, the acceptance of complete detachment from material enjoyment in life to elevate oneself to the highest spiritual understanding; and Tapas, or the various kinds of voluntary austerities performed for spiritual perfection. Brahma created the 4 great sages, Sanak, Sananda, Sanatan, and Sanat, to entrust them with these 4 principles of spiritual advancement, and they inaugurated their own spiritual party or sampradaya known as Kumar Sampradaya. or later on as the Nimbarka Sampradaya for the advancement of the bhakti. All these great sages became great devotees, for without devotional service to the personality of Godhead, one cannot achieve success in any activity of spiritual value.
Very good. In the beginning, Brahma created 4 great sages named Sanaka, Sananda, Sanatana, and Sanat Kumara. All of them were unwilling to adopt materialistic activities because they were highly elevated due to their semens flowing upwards. Well, this is something that most people don't know, that is possible to invigorate the brain with semen rather than, because that is a very precious and powerful substance that we make in this body. It is said it takes about 2 pounds of food to make takes 2 pounds of food to make one drop of blood, and it takes like 40 drops of blood to make one semen. So if you waste semen, you're basically depleting the body of its vitality. Therefore, it should only be used for procreation, not for any other purpose. And if you do that, then eventually it's possible that by Krishna's mercy, semen can go up into the brain and empower it with tremendous remembrance and abilities. So this is what happened with the 4 Kumaras, because they decided never to become adults. They still have very young bodies, almost like children, but they are great sages, and they've never dropped any semen in their tremendously long life. And they are the founders of the Sampradaya, the Kumara Sampradaya, which in modern days is called the Nimbarka Sampradaya. So there are 4 Vaishnava Sampradayas. There's the one that we're in called the Brahma Madhva Sampradaya. Then there is the Sri Sampradaya, the Shri Vaishnavas. There's the Rudra Sampradaya. Now that doesn't mean that the followers of Sankaracharya who worship Lord Shiva, they're not members of the Rudra Sampradaya. Rudra Sampradaya, they're Vaishnavas like us. And so, what is the name of the Rudra Sampradaya today? It's called Vishnu Swami Sudadvaita. So you have these different, okay, so we have the Brahma Sampradaya, you have the Sri Sampradaya, you have the Shiva Sampradaya, and you have the Kumara Sampradaya. So these are the 4 bona fide Vaishnava Sampradayas. And they have all the same, they all worship Krishna. And there are very few little differences in the philosophical, it's not even worth talking about the little differences, but we will talk about it a little bit later. So anyway, Brahma wanted his sons to become, to grow and be mature and to produce progeny or children or prajas. They refuse to do it. They say, we don't want to grow older. We don't want to become adults. We don't want to produce children in praja. We want to remain like this and just be engaged in devotional service. So it says here, although Brahma created the principles of nescience, or meaning ignorance, as a matter of necessity for those living entities who were destined to ignorance by the will of the Lord, he, meaning Brahma, was not satisfied in performing such thankless task. He therefore created 4 principles of knowledge. Okay, so now we're getting on the positive side. He starts off on the complete negative side, producing 4 types of ignorance to keep people entrapped in the material world. And now he's doing something to help people who want to be free of the cycle of birth and death. So again, everything depends on our desires. Most people who are in the material world desire sense gratification. So in order to have sense gratification, they have to forget Krishna. They have to go into ignorance. But not everybody is like that. Some people become sober and decide that they want to become Krishna conscious. So therefore, Brahma created Sankhya, or the empirical philosophy for the analytical study of material conditions. That means Sankhya philosophy is basically concerned with the 24 material elements. That is earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, ego, and then their extension, like the Mahabhutas, and then the different types of material nature, earth. Well, Mahabhutas are earth, water, fire, air, ether. And then you have the 5 kinds of working senses, and then 5 kinds of senses for gathering knowledge, and the objects of the senses, so that's 20. And then there's the next 4, which are, anyway, you can break down you can expand the 8 earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego into 24 principles of material nature. Okay, so therefore he creates the Sankhya, or the empirical philosophy for the analytical study of material conditions. In other words, studying the 24 material elements. And then yoga, or the mysticism. Well, yoga means transcendental. Okay, so it's the mysticism for liberation of the pure soul from material bondage. It's not this nonsense yoga that they're practicing today for, exercises, for health, for better sense gratification. That's not yoga. Yoga is something transcendental. It's how to go back to Godhead. It's mystical also, because it transcends the material world. Okay, and then the mysticism for liberation of the pure soul from material bondage, and vairagya, the acceptance of complete detachment from material enjoyment in life to elevate oneself to the highest spiritual understanding. So that is a type of detachment, complete detachment from any desire for sense gratification, and then ultimately tapas, or various kinds of voluntary austerities performed for spiritual perfection. So now Brahma has created, first of all, the different types of ignorance that keep people trapped in the material world. Now he creates these 4 types of principles of knowledge by which people can be liberated from the cycle of birth and death. So he's not one-sided. He's leveled off everything now. So if you want to go back to Godhead, okay, he gives you the means to do it. You have Sankhya, you have yoga, you have vairagya, you have tapas. And if you don't want to be liberated, you just want sense gratification, then you have the four kinds of devastating ignorance, forgetfulness of one's real identity, in other words, accepting the body to be the self, and then self, which creates your mindset of self-deception, and then because you think I am only this body, there's fear of death, or afraid of death, or the sense of death, and then along with that, there's anger. And then number 3 is anger after frustration, and then there's false ownership with material of material nature, and false identification with material nature, and then there's the illusory body conception of life, or forgetfulness of one's real identity as an eternal soul. So Tamishra, Andra Tamishra, Tamas, Moha, and Mahamoha. Okay, so when we get into the, let's say, understanding of the 4 Vaishnava sampradayas, you suddenly see that there is a great community for making spiritual advancement. The Brahma Sampradaya is not the only one. You have these 3 other sampradayas, and they're all trying to basically worship Krishna and go back to Godhead. Okay. Are there any questions about this? It's a big subject, yes.
So, Maharaj, here the 4 principles that Brahma has said, and 4 sampradayas are expected that we understand Krishna and develop the devotional qualities.
I didn't understand.
So, 4 sampradayas are created to develop the devotional attachments and devotional qualities,
Yes.
so that we develop a relationship with Krishna.
Yeah.
But in this, the 4 principles that are mentioned, one which is Sankhya, which is analytical study, doesn't help you develop like true relationship with Krishna in his Swarupa.
If you learn the real Sankhya, there are 2 Sankhyas. There's the Sankhya taught by the original person, and the Sankhya taught by a false, phony person. Both of them claim to be Kapila Muni. There's the real Kapila Muni who teaches the real Sankhya, and there's the false Kapila Muni in Kali Yuga that teaches the false Sankhya. Now, most of the books about Sankhya are the false Kapila Muni's explanations. That's why there's confusion. You see how Maya plays her tricks. There's a real Kapila Muni, and he's in the Bhagavatam, and he's explaining Sankhya Yoga. And then there's the false Kapila in Kali Yuga, who's writing these big books about Sankhya. And it just happens, if you go to an Indian library, they just have the false Sankhya's books. They don't have the real Sankhya of Kapila Muni. Okay? So the real Sankhya of Kapila Muni is how you can go back to Godhead, by understanding the material nature and what its purpose is. The purpose of the material nature is to, and the purpose of this empirical knowledge is to see the difference between matter and spirit, and to become engaged in devotional service rather than engaged in sense gratification. But the false Sankhya is only concerned with material understanding, and that understanding is wrong because it does not mention the relationship with Krishna. You see? So, did you know that there were two Kapilas?
No.
You see, you learned something new. One is the real Kapila and the other is the false Kapila. So, unfortunately, most of the, let's say, books about Sankhya are based on the false Kapila's nonsense explanation of Sankhya. Okay. So, therefore, it says here, Brahma was not satisfied in performing such a thankless task by creating the four types of misery and ignorance. He therefore created four principles of knowledge, Sankhya or empirical philosophy, for the analytical study of material conditions. So, understanding the difference between matter and spirit is spiritual knowledge, right? Everything is not matter, but if you study the false Sankhya, it's like going to school and learning about mundane science. It's all about everything is matter and there's no spirit. But when you read Kapila Muni, the real Kapila Muni's Sankhya philosophy, you understand that there's what's the difference between matter and spirit, and how even matter is spiritual and it can be used in the service of Krishna. And then you can liberate yourself and go back to Godhead. So this is Maya's tricks. And every one of the four, let's say, the four types of things that Brahma created here, the Sankhya, the Yoga, and the Vairagya, and the Tapas, there are false explanations also of them. So therefore, there's chaos, there's confusion. That's why it's very important that we learn from the Vaishnava acharyas and not from these false pretenders who have written nonsense books that completely deny the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But they use the same words, they use the same, sometimes the same type of examples. So it's confusing for people to know what's the real Sankhya, what's the false Sankhya, what's the real yoga, what's the false yoga, what's the real Vairagya, what's the false Vairagya, and so forth. So it's very important to regularly come to class to learn these things. Okay, any other questions? Yes.
Maharaji, what is Vairagya means for us as a Grastha?
What is the right?
What is Vairagya? We discussed
Vairagya
about Vairagya.
mean?
Yeah. For, as a Grastha, what is this? How does that imply for us?
Well, do you have fun when you come to the temple and dance and chant?
Always.
Okay. Well, that's the real Vairagya. You understand? It's not that, you're sitting in a cave yourself in the Himalayas and you're meditating on the, what you would call Nirakar. Is there any joy in that? No. So that's the false Vairagya. The real right Vairagya is chanting Hare Krishna ecstatically and dancing. So what does it say here? It says, that vairagya, the acceptance of complete detachment from material enjoyment in life to elevate oneself to the highest spiritual understanding. So, it doesn't say that it is complete detachment from spiritual enjoyment. No, it says complete detachment from material enjoyment. So when you're chanting and dancing in the temple and really completely, depending on Krishna and completely, thanking Krishna for giving us the temple, for giving us the association, for all these things, that is real vairagya. Okay? And the false vairagya is thinking that, nirakar, Krishna doesn't have a body, there's no spiritual world, there's just Brahman, or like the Buddhists, there's nothingness. That's not real vairagya. When you're dancing and joyfully and completely surrendering your heart to Krishna, that is the real vairagya. Okay? Any other questions? So, all these great sages became great devotees, for without devotional service to the personality of Godhead, one cannot achieve success in any activity of spiritual value. So that's what we should focus on, right? The last line of the purport today. All of these great sages, meaning the four Kumaras, became great devotees, for without devotional service to the personality of Godhead, one cannot achieve success in any activity of spiritual value. So we should thank Prabhupada every day for giving us the opportunity to have a temple, to have a community, to have pastimes of ecstatic festivals like last night. It was ecstatic. You were dancing, going up and down. You were doing the train, going up and down, right? Now, that's the real vairagya. That's the real, what it says here. The acceptance of complete detachment from material enjoyment in life to elevate oneself to the highest spiritual understanding. So we detach ourselves from mundane, let's say, happiness, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, right? Now, let's say you're in an airplane flying somewhere. And in the airplanes, they have those magazines, right, that you can pick up right in front of you. And in the magazine, it's talking about, let's say you're in Seattle, so it says, go to Montreal and be happy. And now you see all these very glossy pictures of Montreal, of a bar with hundreds of different types of liquor, and everything is bright and shiny, and then people are sitting in these stools, and they're very, very happy, and they have nice teeth and hair and clothing, and and you say, oh yeah, maybe I should go to Montreal to be happy. You see? So this is Maya, right? And then when you go to Montreal, there's another glossy, let's say, magazine. It says, go to Seattle and be happy. Again, you see a picture in Seattle at Pike Place Park, or this thing or that thing. So we don't accept that type of so-called happiness because it's sense gratification. There's nothing related to Krishna. Is there anything related to Krishna in those books? No, nothing at all. It's all about how you can increase your sense gratification. So that's not real vairagya. Real vairagya is Harinam Sankirtan, festivals, and prasadam distribution, and hearing classes, and and engaging in all kinds of activities like, protecting cows and so forth. Okay? So therefore, the vairagya explained here is the acceptance of complete detachment from material enjoyment in life to elevate oneself to the highest spiritual understanding. Okay. Any other questions? Those were good questions. Thank you. All right, so then let's go on to the next verse. Tan Baba says Swabu Putran Praja Sri Jata Putraka Tanaich Chan Moksha Dharmano Vasudeva Parayana. Tan unto the Kumaras, as above mentioned. Babase addressed. Swabu Brahma Putran unto the sons. Praja generations. Srijata to create. Putraka, O my sons. Tat, that. Na, not. Aichan, desired. Moksha Dharmana, pledged to the principles of liberation. Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead. Parayana, who are so devoted. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Brahma spoke to his sons after generating them. My dear sons, he said, now generate progeny, meaning children. But due to their being attached to Vasudeva, meaning Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they aimed at liberation, and therefore they expressed their unwillingness. They're saying no to their father Brahma. Who would like to read the purport? You want to read?
The four sons of Brahma, the Kumaras, declined to become family men, even on the request of their great father Brahma. Those who are serious about gaining release from material bondage should not be entangled in the false relationship of family bondage. People may ask how the Kumaras could refuse the orders of Brahma, who was their father and above all the creator of the universe. The reply is that one who is Vasudeva Parayana, or seriously engaged in the devotional service of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, need not care for any other obligation.
Okay, stop right there for a second. So here it says, those who are serious about gaining release from material bondage should not be entangled in the false relationship of family bondage. Now that sounds like, whoa, we're against family. We're against having children. We're against raising the children. We're against all these things. Not really. It's talking about the false relationship of family bondage. There is a real relationship also of family, that is the spiritual family. Just like we say, well, we have a temple, and in the temple we have our spiritual family, all the devotees, right? So we're not saying, oh, you can't be attached to that because that's Maya. No. There is what you call a spiritual family. That's where all the members of the family or all the members of a temple are working cooperatively to serve the deities and to spread Krishna consciousness. That's called a spiritual family. So there's nothing wrong with a spiritual family, but there's a lot wrong with a materialistic family. So this is what he's talking about. So the Kumaras, they did not want to be entangled in the false relationship of family bondage. Well, that's the way they're looking at it. But yet, Prabhupada had a family. Krishna has a family. You can go down the list, right? So let's not jump to conclusions without understanding what's being said. What's being said is, look, the Kumaras, they decided, look, I don't want to get married. I don't want to produce children, and I don't want to grow older. I want to stay always a young, like tender boy, and be engaged in these 4 activities. In other words, what was already explained. You have the vairagya, you have the tapas, etc., and to help people make spiritual advancement. Okay, so continue reading now.
It is enjoined in the Bhagavatam. Enjoined in the Bhagavatam. Anyone who has completely given up all worldly relationship and has taken absolute shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, who gives us salvation, and who alone is fit to be taken shelter of, is no longer a debtor or debtor or servant of anyone, including the demigods, forefathers, sages, other living entities, relatives, and members of human society. Thus, there was nothing wrong in the acts of the Kumaras when they refused their great father's request that they may become family men.
Okay, so this is a special case. Anyone who has completely given up all worldly relationships and has taken absolute shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, who gives us salvation and who alone is fit to be taken shelter of, is no longer a debtor or servant of anyone, including the demigods, forefathers, sages, other living entities, relatives, and members of human society. Thus, so this is a verse in the Bhagavatam 11.5.41. Thus, there was nothing wrong in the acts of the Kumaras when they refused their great father's request that they become family men. Well, we have examples even in ISKCON. In the earlier days in ISKCON, young brahmacharis, they wanted to become sannyasis. And they accepted sannyas. And Prabhupada let them, on the idea that they would spend the rest of their life as sannyasis. But a lot of them fell down. So that is like, instead of being a sannyasi, they became a vantasi. Vantasi means someone who slurps up their vomit. You know what slurping means, like you sort of swallow your own vomit, right? So that's the example of a person who accepts sannyas. He has the danda and everything, and all of a sudden they give it all up and get married and have children. Now, that does not mean that a person like that should be, let's say, ostracized or forced to leave the movement. But Prabhupada was very upset about this, because you make a vow to be celibate the rest of your life and then you break it. It's a very serious thing. So, therefore, here, this is a special thing where anyone who has completely given up all worldly relationships and has taken shelter, absolute shelter, of the lotus feet of the Lord, and who gives up salvation. So, what does that mean, salvation? They don't even want liberation. They're just satisfied serving Krishna life after life, right? And who alone is fit to be taken shelter of, is no longer a debtor or servant of anyone, including the demigods, forefathers, sages, other living entities, relatives, and members of human society. Thus, there was nothing wrong in the acts of the Kumaras when they refused their great father's request that they become family men. So, how many people are on that level? Very few. So you don't have to artificially want to be a sannyasi or a complete renunciate. It's better that you, and the example is Prabhupada. He was married. He had children. He raised his children. He got them married. So, and then on the other hand, you have someone like Sridhar Swami. He took sannyas in 1930, and he remained a sannyasi his whole life. But Prabhupada and Sridhar Swami were very good friends. In fact, Prabhupada gave Sridhar Swami a large part of his home where he could preach and do programs. So here we see what is, one is a sannyasi, a real sannyasi that's completely celibate, and the other is a grihasta, who's also completely dedicated to serving Krishna. So so did Sridhar Swami say, no, I'm not going to live in your house because you're a grihasta, and I don't want to have anything to do with grihastas? He didn't say that. He lived in Prabhupada's house, one section of it, and Prabhupada gave it to him so that he could preach and spread Krishna consciousness. Now, you might not know about this, but I'm explaining to you. Sridhar Swami is one of Prabhupada's godbrothers. Of course, he's deceased now, but he was highly elevated Vaishnava. And Prabhupada and he were best friends, and they worked together in spreading Krishna consciousness. So here you have the grihasta and you have the sannyasi working together. They're not, the sannyasi doesn't say, no, I'm not going to stay in his house. He's some low-class grihasta. No, he didn't say anything like that. He lived in Prabhupada's house, and he preached, even though the family was there, right? So there's a difference between being genuine and being disingenuous. So if someone is genuine, like the four Kumaras, who say, look, we don't want anything to do with family or anything like that. We're satisfied just spreading Krishna consciousness. Well, then they have a right to refuse even the instruction of Brahma, not because they want sense gratification, but because they're serious about their complete, let's say, freedom from any type of material entanglement. Okay. So are there any questions?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Haribol.
So, maybe my recollection was not complete. So I thought initially the Kumaras obviously did not want to engage, but then they were Brahmavadis. They were not completely understanding the Lord. Is that, and then they get the smell of the tulsi, and then they become fully devotees. So my question is, according to this verse, it says one should not even seek salvation. But initially, weren't the Kumaras more around just the liberation? They were not attached to the Lord yet, or they didn't understand the Lord fully?
Well, they're very young. They had a guru, right? And they did not claim anything. They were open to all possibilities. So when they went to the door of Vaikuntha, they were stopped by the two guardians. And they said, and the guardian said, look, you can't come in here like this. And they got upset, and they felt that they were being insulted. And they cursed the two guards. And then Lord Vishnu appeared, because they were his guards, and he was responsible. Now, the guards made a mistake. They should not have, cursed the four Kumaras. Not cursed, but they should not have stopped them in that way. They should have gotten permission to stop them, but they just stopped them. So, but this is a transcendental pastime by which the Kumaras completely surrendered to the Lord. So they were bona fide, let's say, impersonalists, as opposed to the unbona fide impersonalists, right? They had this concept of oneness, just like Sukadeva Goswami in the womb of his mother. He refused to leave. He stayed in the womb of his mother 6 months, because he said, look, everything is one, so why should I leave? But when he heard his father speak the four nutshell verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, he said, aha, now I have a reason to leave my mother's womb. I want to go out and preach Krishna consciousness. So there are what you would call bona fide impersonalists, and there are non-bona fide impersonalists. The bona fide impersonalists don't say, well, we don't believe that there's anything beyond Brahman. No. They say, we don't have any knowledge of it, but we're open to hearing or making more spiritual progress. And the nonsense impersonalists, they say, well, no, there's nothing after Brahman. So these are examples of what you would, so a bona fide impersonalist, they have gurus, and the guru helps them gradually make spiritual advancement. And they don't fight it, they don't object to it. Whereas the non-bona fide impersonalists, they're fanatical, and they say there's only absolute oneness, there's nothing else. So therefore you have the example of the Kumaras, and you have the example of the Mayavadis. And although you might say they were both impersonalists in a sense, but not really. One is a fanatic, the Mayavadi, and the other are open to making progressive spiritual advancement. And that's what bona fide spiritual life is. It's progressive. You're always progressing, learning more and more, engaging more and more, developing more and more faith, spreading the movement more and more. So these are examples that we need to know. Everything is not, there's not only one truth the truth has multiple facets to it. So you have something like the four Kumaras. You have Sukadeva Goswami, right? And it shows you how they're progressive, whereas the fanatics, they're not progressive. They stop and they deny, right? Okay. Any other questions?
One observation, Maharaj. The way you interpreted the false relation of family bondage, if we read ourselves, we actually misunderstand that, the meaning of that.
Yes, of course.
We couldn't think of there is also a real relationship of family bondage. That's what I wanted to mention.
Well, look, if the whole family is Krishna conscious, there's no even need for the husband to take sannyas, because the whole family are acting like sannyasis, you see. And Prabhupada explains that also. It's not that he doesn't explain that. It's not something I make up just now. He does say, if everybody in the family is Krishna conscious, you don't have to take sannyas, right? Because you're all acting like sannyasis. Right? So we should. That's why you have to come to class. That's why there has to be someone who can explain these things. Otherwise, you read that and you say, "Look, I'm not going to join this Hare Krishnas because they're just crazy. They're against family. They're against having children. I'm married. That means that they look at me like I'm some demon or something. No. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaji.
Yes.
So first, on the behalf of all of us, we offer our humble obeisances to you on the auspicious day of Guru Purnima today.
Haribo.
My question, just as a curiosity purpose, Maharaji. So in Brahma Samhita, when we read Brahma Samhita, we read about the chapter 5, verse 1. And then we start with the verse 29.
Yeah.
So those
Why?
28 in between.
No, you can. I mean, if you want to quote all of them, you can. No one said you're not allowed to. Okay. But starting. Well, anyway, that's the way Prabhupada was doing it, so we do it like that also. But it doesn't mean you can't chant those mantras. Obviously, they're important mantras also. Every mantra is important. Okay. So let's not jump to any conclusions. Like, for example, we're chanting, only about 12 or more, or 14 or 12 verses of the Brahma Samhita. Does that mean all the other verses are not important? No. They're all important, but we don't have the time. Otherwise, we'd be chanting for about an hour to finish everything before we get to the class. So we just chant some of them that are very important. Right? Haribol. Yeah, what's that? Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much. Very nice and fragrant. Haribol. Yeah, so Guru Purnima. We do anyway, Guru Purnima is usually followed by the Mayavadis. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do it also, but it's usually followed by the Mayavadis. So that's why we have Vyasa Puja. But it is a traditional thing in India. So what do they do on Guru Purnima? Normally.
Just wish and offer something.
when I'm in school, Maharaj, it is backed by RSS.
RSS.
Yes, Maharaj. There we used to do puja to Vyasdev and Krishna.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In my school, we used to celebrate Guru Purnima, and there we will recite the story of Dronacharya and Ekalavya.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So was Ekalavya a good guy or a bad guy?
No, he's not. He was not authentic disciple. He didn't.
Exactly right. But most people think he was a good guy.
Yeah.
And that Arjuna was jealous of him. That's completely wrong. What did he do? He made his guru look like a liar. Because his guru promised Arjuna he would be the greatest archer in the world. And when Arjuna showed the animal that had been hit by these arrows and he said, look, whoever did this is a greater archer than I am. He wasn't complaining in the sense of being jealous. He just showed it to his guru, you know, and then his guru said, well, who is this person? So bring him to me. So Ekalavya comes, and previously Ekalavya had approached the guru to be initiated by him, and he refused. So then Ekalavya goes and starts practicing and makes an effigy of the guru, or a deity of the guru, right, and is worshipping like that, without taking permission from the guru. So he actually was not a bona fide disciple because he didn't listen to the guru's instructions, right? And he made the guru look like he's a liar. He makes a promise to Arjuna, and then all of a sudden Arjuna discovers that there's someone that's might be even a greater archer than he is. And so it was like shocking. So we have to be very careful. Even I used to think, you know, Ekalavya is really sincere, you know. And then when the guru asked him to cut off his thumb so that he could not be such a great archer anymore, he did it right away. But there's a whole explanation of this by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Have you ever read it?
No,
Yeah. We should read his explanation. I'll try and find it for you, or you can look for it also. I mean, when I read that, I realized, oh my God, I was speculating like anything. We should always get the advice of the acharyas and not jump to any conclusions of our own. You see. So I used to think, you know, Ekalavya is a good guy, and Arjuna probably was jealous of him. But that was not true. Ekalavya disrespected the guru by not following his instructions. Okay, so that's your homework. You find that explanation by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur about Ekalavya. You can find it. It's not difficult to find. Right. So you got homework now. Haribol. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. And thank you very much. Very kind of you. You got it? Okay, so print it out or send it to everybody. Send it to me also. You should read this. It's very important to read this. You'll be shocked.
This was published in 2011, but it was by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have your homework. Send it to everyone so they can read it. It's very important to read this because you can see how easy it is to get misled and jump to conclusions that are completely wrong. That's why without the explanation of the acharyas, we should never assume anything. So anybody, if you want to receive the article by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, give your information to Prabhuji so that you can read it. And you want to definitely read this. It's very important. What? Karna, yeah. Karna is another one. What did you read? Okay, well, print that out also.
I'm just asking. I don't know. I was asking.
Oh, you're asking a question. Oh. There's a lot of information about Karna, and how he was a tragic person, right?
There's a sympathy on him also.
Yes. We'll talk about him later. Let's get... Okay, we can begin the Guru Puja.
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhagati Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Bandhu Mohi Savadana Mate
Bandho Muri Savadana Mate
Jahara Prasade Bhai Ye Bhava Turiya Jai
Janara Prasade Bhai E Bhava Koriya Jai
Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoy Te
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Te Koriya Kya Chitte Te Koriya Arana Kori Ho Mane Asha Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati जे प्रसाद पूरे सर्वा आशा चक्षुदान दिलो जय जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशित प्रेम भक्ति जह होइते अविद्या विनाशा जाते वेदे गाय जहर चरित श्री गुरु करुणा सिंधु आधमा जनारा बंधु लोकेनाथ लोकेरा जीवाना हा हा प्रभु कोरो दोयो देह मोरे पादा छाया के बेजास गुषु त्रिभुवाना शिला प्रभुपाद पतित पवना नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमति भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमति भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jaya Gurudev.
His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Prabhupada Vaishnava, Amacharya, Das, Prabhu Sukha Ghosh, Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Bhaktivedanta Srivas, Sri Radha Krishna Gopal, Sam Sri Vrindavan Dan, Tulasi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Gangam hai ki jai, Jamuna mai ki jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinda ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanandi, all glories to Samaveta, all glories to Samaveta, all glories to Samaveta, glories to Shri Guru and Shri Rama, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavani ki jai. The lotus feet of our spiritual master, the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet.
I bow to, by His grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from His lotus mouth. Attachment to His lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord birth after birth. From Him ecstatic prema emanates. By Him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of His character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and the Lord and the master of all the devotees. O Lokanatha Goswami, O Master, be merciful unto me. Give me the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds. Shelter of feet. Prabhupada ki jai.